There are moments in life when the ground disappears beneath your feet. One sentence, one gesture, one shift in someone's tone can break something inside you that you didn't even know was fragile. Rejection comes fast, without warning, without mercy, without giving you time to breathe. And when it hits, it feels personal, deeply personal, as if someone looked at everything you are and decided, quietly and casually, that it wasn't enough. What hurts isn't just the loss, it's the meaning your mind builds around it. Suddenly, every flaw feels sharper. Every insecurity grows louder. Every memory twists itself into a weapon aimed directly at you. And in that chaos, when your chest feels tight and your thoughts refuse to slow down, you start searching for answers. You look for signs you missed, moments you misread, explanations that might numb the pain. You replay conversations, reanalyze details that no longer matter, and tell yourself that if you could understand what went wrong, maybe you could fix what shattered. But the truth is brutal. The search for meaning is the very thing that keeps you stuck. Rejection is not a puzzle to be solved. It's a decision someone made. And no amount of overthinking will make that decision hurt less. That's why the first step in this process is simple in theory but incredibly hard in practice. Accept that their choice doesn't define you. Most people don't understand how destructive it is to let someone's decision rewrite your self-worth. The moment someone rejects you, your mind tries to turn their choice into a verdict on who you are. I wasn't enough. I failed. I must have done something wrong. These thoughts don't appear because they are true. They appear because your identity is wounded and desperate for explanation. But someone else's inability to appreciate you says far more about their emotional capacity than about your value as a human being. Acceptance is not surrender. Acceptance is clarity. It's acknowledging that you cannot control the feelings, fears, timing, or emotional limitations of other people. Rejection happens for 1,000 reasons, many of which have nothing to do with you. People reject out of fear, out of confusion, out of selfishness, out of emotional immaturity, out of unresolved wounds they never faced. None of these reasons are a mirror of your worth. When you allow someone's choice to define you, you hand them power they were never meant to hold. You let a moment rewrite your confidence. You let another person's confusion shape your identity. And that is the moment your internal collapse begins. Because the only person who gets to define who you are is you. Accepting their choice also means accepting that you may never get the truth behind it. Maybe they don't know how to communicate honestly. Maybe they were afraid of hurting you. Maybe they didn't want to confront their contradictions. Or maybe they simply lacked the courage to stay. None of those possibilities justify your pain, but they explain why searching for meaning will never heal you. You cannot fix what was never in your control. And you shouldn't try. When you start accepting this, something subtle but powerful shifts inside you. The weight of rejection becomes lighter, not because the pain disappears, but because you stop fighting reality. You stop trying to rewrite a story that's already finished. Acceptance gives you back the energy you were wasting on questions that had no answers. And that energy is exactly what you'll need for the next steps. True acceptance sounds like this. I didn't cause their choice. I don't control their choice. And their choice says nothing about my worth. When you internalize that, the fog begins to clear. Your breathing becomes steadier. Your thoughts loosen their grip. You stop blaming yourself for someone else's emotional limits. And for the first time since the rejection happened, you feel something unexpected. Space to think clearly. Space to understand yourself. Space to rebuild. The pain may still be there, but it no longer defines you. Because now you see the truth. Rejection doesn't break you. It reveals you. It shows you where your worth was dependent on someone else's approval. And it pushes you, sometimes violently, back toward yourself. This is the foundation. Without it, nothing that comes next will work. But once you accept that their choice isn't a measure of your value, you begin to rise. And rising is exactly what the next steps are about. If this video is already helping you see things more clearly, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and comment something you've learned about yourself through rejection. Your engagement helps this message reach people who need it. Once you accept that someone's decision doesn't define you, The next battlefield isn't what they did, it's what your mind keeps demanding. After a rejection, your brain begins a hunt it was never meant to complete. It wants explanations, closure, apologies, clarity, and a final conversation that will neatly wrap all the pain into something understandable. But here's the truth that most people resist. Closure is a fantasy we create to avoid emotional discomfort. And chasing it only chains you to the very thing you're trying to move past. This is why step 2 is essential. Silence your need for closure. Your mind believes closure will heal you. But what it really wants is relief. Relief from confusion. Relief from the sting to your ego. Relief from the feeling that something unfinished is still controlling your heart. But closure rarely gives relief. It usually brings more questions, more disappointment, more emotional chaos. Even if the person explained why, would it truly make you feel better? Or would you analyze their words, doubt them, replay them, and twist them into new reasons to feel hurt? Closure is a trap disguised as healing. It makes you think that peace is something another person must give you. That peace sits in someone else's hands, waiting to be handed back to you once they decide you deserve it. But that belief keeps you powerless. It gives your emotional stability to someone who already walked away. And that is the last place your strength should be. Silencing your need for closure means refusing to let unresolved emotions dictate your actions. It means understanding that you don't need another conversation to start moving on. You don't need an apology to feel whole. You don't need explanations that try to make sense of something that was always messy. You simply need to accept what happened, and then refuse to let your mind negotiate with the past. One of the most painful truths is this. People who can't give you clarity rarely had clarity inside themselves. How can someone explain what they never processed? How can someone close a door they never learned to shut properly? How can someone offer emotional honesty if they never learned how to be honest with themselves? And so you sit there waiting for something that isn't coming. Not because you aren't worth it, but because the other person isn't capable of giving it. Silencing the need for closure is not about pretending you don't care. It's about acknowledging that your healing must be self-directed. That closure is not something you receive, it's something you create. And you create it the moment you stop trying to rewrite the past through someone else's words. When you stop seeking closure, you break the psychological loop that keeps you stuck. The loop where you rehearse conversations in your head, imagining what you would say if you had one more chance to speak. The loop where you replay their last message, searching for hidden meaning. The loop where you check their social media for clues about how they feel. All of these habits feed the illusion that closure is just one step away, when in reality, it exists only when you stop chasing it. Real closure is silent. Real closure is internal. Real closure is a decision, not a conversation. And something powerful happens when you commit to this step. Your emotional energy begins to return to you. The appetite for answers fades. The mental noise quiets. The urge to reach out weakens. You begin to realize that closure was never the goal. Self-respect was. By refusing to chase someone who chose to walk away, you reclaim the dignity that rejection tried to steal. This step is the bridge between acceptance and transformation. Without silencing the need for closure, you will always feel pulled backward, dragged by unfinished emotional stories. But once you release that need, you create space. Space for clarity, strength, and forward movement. And that forward movement is what the next step is all about. Pain has a strange way of becoming the loudest voice in your life. It wakes you up in the middle of the night, pulls your thoughts into places you don't want to go, and reminds you of everything you lost. Pain after rejection is especially cruel because it attacks the core of your identity. It isn't just the memory of what happened, it's the echo of what you believed about yourself before it happened. And if you're not careful, pain becomes the architect of your future, shaping your decisions, your confidence, and your vision of who you can become. But pain can also be redirected. It can be converted. It can be turned into the exact force that helps you rebuild your life from the ground up. That's why step 3 is powerful. Turn pain into drive. Most people try to escape their pain. They distract themselves, suppress it, numb it with temporary comforts, or convince themselves they don't care. But what you resist always persists. Pain ignored becomes heavier. Pain avoided becomes louder. But pain understood and channeled becomes strength. The key is not to deny what you feel, but to use what you feel. Pain exposes the gaps in your life. It shows you where you were depending too much on someone else to feel whole. It reveals the weaknesses you overlooked, the emotional habits you neglected, the insecurities you never addressed. Pain removes the illusions you were living under and forces you to confront the parts of yourself that need growth. It delivers a truth that comfort never could. And once you see those gaps, you can fill them. Not with people, not with validation, but with discipline, direction, and purpose. Turning pain into drive begins with a shift in mindset. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" you ask, "What can I build from this?" That is the moment the transformation begins. Because pain is energy. And energy needs direction. If you don't give it a purpose, it will consume you. But when you harness it, when you channel it into action, it becomes a force that few people can match. The same emotion that could have broken you becomes the engine that propels you into the next chapter of your life. This is why some of the strongest people you've ever met have the deepest scars. They didn't heal because they were strong. They became strong because they learned to use their pain. Turning pain into drive means you stop letting your emotions paralyze you and start letting them move you. Let the anger push you to rebuild your discipline. Let the sadness push you to reconnect with yourself. Let the heartbreak push you to take your life more seriously. Let the emptiness push you to fill your time with something meaningful. Emotions are not enemies. They are signals. And when you follow them with intention, they lead you toward growth. There's something powerful about breaking a sweat when your heart is heavy, lifting weights when your chest aches, working on your goals when your mind is a storm. Pain gives you a kind of focus that comfort never will. It makes you hungry. It makes you alert. It makes you capable of pushing beyond your old limits because staying the same is now more painful than evolving. This is why many people rise right after a heartbreak. It's not coincidence. It's opportunity. Pain removes the filters. It removes the excuses. It reminds you that time is short, and staying in the same version of yourself is not an option. When you turn pain into drive, you reclaim control. You stop being a victim of your story and start becoming the author of it. You stop letting what happened define your identity and start letting it define your ambition. You stop waiting for healing to arrive passively and start creating healing through action. And slowly, something powerful begins to happen. The pain doesn't fade because you forgot. It fades because you outgrew it. It becomes a memory, not a prison. It becomes perspective, not punishment. It becomes a lesson, not a label. When you reach this point, you start to understand why rejection came. You start to appreciate the fire it lit inside you. You start to see that your pain was your turning point, not your downfall. And now that your pain has direction, you are ready for the next evolution. The step where you begin building a life strong enough that no rejection can ever collapse it again. That's what comes next. Once pain becomes drive, something in you wakes up. Something sharp, something hungry, something that refuses to go back to the version of yourself that allowed someone else's presence to dictate your direction. But this awakening is only the beginning. Drive is energy, powerful but unstable. What you do with that energy determines whether you truly rise or whether you fall back into the same emotional patterns when the next rejection hits. That's why step 4 is crucial. Build a life that doesn't depend on anyone. Dependency is invisible until it breaks. You don't notice how much of yourself you handed away until the moment it's taken from you. The calls you waited for, the reassurance you relied on, the attention you used as proof that you were enough. These small emotional habits form chains around your identity, and you don't feel the weight of those chains until they snap. Rejection doesn't simply remove someone from your life. It exposes how fragile your happiness was when it depended on their presence. Building a life that stands on its own means reconstructing your foundation. Not the foundation built out of someone's affection, but the one built from your discipline, your character, your values, your goals. It means creating a world that doesn't collapse when a person leaves, because it was never held up by them in the first place. This step begins with taking full ownership of your time. People lose themselves because they let others occupy their hours, shape their priorities, and influence their emotional weather. But when you start choosing how you spend your time, intentionally, consistently, unapologetically, your life shifts. You start investing in activities that sharpen your mind, strengthen your body, and elevate your purpose. And as your time becomes more meaningful, your identity becomes more stable. Building a life of independence also means strengthening your internal resources. Confidence isn't something you wait to feel. It's something you create through action. Respect isn't something you demand. It emerges from the way you carry yourself. Peace isn't something you search for. It is built through the clarity of your choices. When your internal resources grow, emotional dependency dissolves. You stop needing someone to validate your worth, calm your fear, or fill your emptiness. You become someone who can stand alone without shaking. Another key part of this step is constructing a routine that doesn't leave space for emotional collapse. When your days are empty, your mind becomes crowded. When your hours lack purpose, memories from the past invade them. But a structured life, one filled with learning, training, building, creating, improving, doesn't leave much room for rumination. Confidence grows when you're consistently moving toward a better version of yourself. And movement is the enemy of emotional stagnation. Building a life that doesn't depend on anyone doesn't mean isolating yourself. It means becoming someone who chooses relationships deliberately, not out of fear, not out of loneliness, not out of need. When your life is full, you don't cling to people. You don't beg for attention. You don't break when someone walks away. You appreciate connection, but you don't rely on it to survive. This independence changes your presence. You begin to carry yourself differently. The world feels your stability. People sense your boundaries. They notice the quiet strength of someone who does not crumble under emotional pressure. And ironically, this independence makes you more attractive, not because you're chasing anyone, but because you finally stopped needing approval to exist. The most powerful people are not the ones surrounded by admiration. They are the ones who function at full capacity even in solitude. They are self-driven, self-contained, and self-defined. Their worth isn't up for negotiation, it's built into their discipline. As you build this kind of life, you begin to understand something crucial. Rejection didn't break you. It revealed that you were leaning on something unstable. And now, you're learning to lean on yourself. This step prepares you for the final part of the transformation. Because once you have rebuilt your life from the inside out, one decision remains. The decision that closes the door emotionally, mentally, spiritually. You must walk away without looking back. That is the last step. When you've rebuilt your foundation and created a life that stands on its own, a moment comes. A moment most people avoid because it demands a level of emotional honesty that feels almost uncomfortable. It's the moment where you must choose between lingering in the memory of what hurt you or stepping into the identity you've been slowly constructing. This is where step 5 comes in. Walk away with dignity and never look back. Walking away isn't about running. It isn't about pretending you don't care. It isn't about masking pain with arrogance. Walking away is a declaration, not to the person who rejected you, but to yourself. It is the moment you say, "My life continues from here." Not with longing, not with bitterness, but with clarity. Most people try to move on physically while remaining emotionally anchored to the past. They leave, but they keep checking. They leave, but they keep imagining what could have been. They leave, but they wait for the other person to realize their mistake. That is not walking away. That is emotional limbo. True dignity begins where emotional dependency ends. To walk away means closing the mental doors you've kept half open. It means no longer revisiting the same memories trying to rewrite them. It means accepting that whatever ended needed to end. Not because you weren't enough, but because you were meant to grow beyond that moment. Looking back keeps you tied to a version of yourself that no longer exists. The person you were during that relationship, that expectation, that attachment, that version has already evolved. Turning your head backward only reopens wounds you've already healed. Dignity in this context is not a performance. It's a posture. It's the quiet confidence of someone who knows that their value is constant, regardless of who stays or leaves. When you walk away with dignity, you refuse to crumble for someone who couldn't handle your depth. You refuse to cling to someone who made a choice that excluded you. You refuse to hand your future to someone who is no longer part of it. Instead, you choose yourself, not out of pride, but out of self-respect. And here's the paradox. The moment you walk away completely, the emotional power shifts. Not because you want revenge, not because you seek validation, but because the absence of your energy becomes visible. When you stop checking, when you stop hoping, when you stop waiting, when you stop trying to control outcomes, that silence speaks louder than any message you could have sent. But this shift isn't something you chase, it's something you allow. Because your goal is not to be wanted again. Your goal is to be whole. Walking away also means abandoning fantasies. Not just fantasies about what the relationship could have been, but fantasies about who the person was. Rejection often comes wrapped in illusion, illusions of potential, of promises, of imagined futures. But when you walk away with dignity, you stop bargaining with these illusions. You stop imagining that the person will wake up one day and understand your worth. You stop projecting qualities onto them that they never actually possessed. This is freedom. Not the kind of freedom that feels like euphoria, but the kind that feels like truth. The most difficult part of this step is trusting the path ahead without looking for reassurance in the past. It requires believing that better connections exist, that deeper respect exists, that someone who truly values you will never make you feel replaceable. It requires believing that you are worthy of a life that doesn't include emotional instability. And that belief grows stronger every time you choose yourself over nostalgia. Walking away with dignity is the emotional equivalent of closing a book, not slamming it shut, not ripping out pages, not burning it. Simply closing it. Gently. Knowing the story is complete. Knowing you don't need to reread the painful chapters. Knowing you can carry the lessons without carrying the weight. When you walk away like this, you create an opening for something new. Something aligned, something reciprocal, something stable. And the beauty of this step is that once you walk away for real, your past loses its power. You no longer feel compelled to revisit that moment. You no longer measure your worth through someone else's decision. You no longer shape your future based on who couldn't stay. You rise above it. Not loudly, not dramatically, but undeniably. This is the final emotional transformation. The step that frees you not from the person who rejected you, but from the version of yourself who needed them. And once you take this step, the path ahead becomes clearer than it has been in a long time. Now it's time to close the journey, to tie all the steps together and solidify everything you learned. That's what the final part is for. Rejection has a way of reshaping the world around you. What once felt familiar becomes unfamiliar. What once felt stable suddenly feels fragile. And the hardest part isn't losing someone. It's losing the version of yourself that existed when you believed that connection was secure. But the truth is this: every version of you that breaks is a version that was ready to be rebuilt. And everything you walked through in these 5 steps brought you to this moment. A place where clarity finally replaces confusion. You didn't just learn how to get over rejection. You learned how to reclaim yourself from the ruins of an emotional collapse. Because rejection is not merely an ending. It is the moment the mask falls off. It exposes what you tied your worth to. It exposes where you depended too much on someone else's affection to feel whole. It exposes the illusions you created about people, relationships, and your own identity. And once those illusions shatter, you're forced to rebuild from truth, not fantasy. Let's look clearly at this transformation. In step 1, you realize that someone's choice is not a mirror. Their decision is a reflection of their own emotional state, limitations, and fears. You stopped interpreting rejection as an evaluation of your value, and instead began seeing it as a decision that belongs to them, not as a sentence handed down to you. That shift seems small, but it changes the entire way you view yourself. You stop demanding explanations from people who barely understood themselves. In step 2, you cut the cord to closure, one of the hardest emotional illusions we cling to. You face the truth that closure rarely exists because most people aren't emotionally honest enough to give it. You learned that waiting for closure keeps you trapped in the very story you're trying to escape. And so, you took responsibility for your own healing. You stopped expecting someone else to deliver the peace you needed to give yourself. In step 3, you stopped letting pain sit inside you like a silent poison. Instead, you learned to convert that pain into energy. The kind of energy that drives growth, discipline, and inner evolution. Pain became movement. Pain became focus. Pain became the fire that pushed you into rebuilding a life with intention instead of desperation. You discovered that suffering isn't just something you survive. It's something you can transform. In step 4, you rebuilt the architecture of your life from the ground up. You created routines, structure, purpose, not to distract yourself from the past, but to build a foundation that doesn't collapse the next time someone leaves. You realized that a stable life cannot be rooted in another person. It must be rooted in self-respect, clarity, emotional maturity, and discipline. This step is where your identity began to expand beyond what was lost. And finally, step 5 taught you the most powerful move of all: walking away with your dignity intact. Not half-walking, not pretending, not waiting, not hoping for their regret. Truly walking away, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. You closed the book without tearing out the pages. You let the story end without rewriting the ending. You accepted that what is meant for you will never rely on confusion, inconsistency, or indecision. And in doing so, you freed your future from the weight of your past. This journey wasn't simple. It wasn't fast. It wasn't painless. But it was necessary. Because on the other side of rejection is a version of you that no longer depends on external validation. A version of you that can stand alone without collapsing. A version of you that knows peace isn't given, it's built. Strength isn't found, it's created. Worth isn't granted, it's recognized. And now, you stand in a place where the past no longer owns you. You're no longer replaying conversations in your mind. You're no longer checking if they still think about you. You're no longer wondering what you could have done differently. You're no longer seeking apologies, explanations, or emotional crumbs. Instead, you are present, grounded, clear, unshakable. Rejection didn't destroy you. It revealed what needed to be rebuilt. It showed you what part of you was still fragile. And it pushed you, sometimes violently, toward the version of yourself you were always meant to become. You're not healed because the pain disappeared. You're healed because the pain no longer defines you. And now that you've walked this entire path, there is just one thing left to do. If this message helped you, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment telling us which of the 5 steps changed your perspective the most. Your voice can be the strength someone else needs today. This might be the end of the video, but it's the beginning of a version of you that no rejection will ever break again.